All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started because it is 6 o'clock, and I want to make sure that we have time to do the whole presentation, and then we will work on those questions. So I want to welcome you to our kindergarten orientation. My name is Kylie Danielson, and I'm the principal at Rainier Elementary. We want to welcome you to our virtual kindergarten orientation for the 2020-2021 school year. We know that these are very different circumstances to be launching your students' elementary school career. This orientation is meant to give kindergarten families an overview of what to expect in the coming weeks. This is a Clover Park School District overview, so we won't go into a lot of specifics about individual schools at this time, but please know that you'll have opportunities to speak directly with your child's teacher soon. If you have questions throughout the presentation, please put them in the chat. We may have time for questions at the end, but we will also post a frequently asked questions document after the session with answers to the questions that you post. If you want to go to this, nope, you're already there. Good job, Ben. So these are the presenters for this evening, and I'm going to have them each introduce themselves and what their role is.
Good evening, I'm Genevieve Herman, and I'm a kindergarten teacher at Four Heroes Elementary School.
Good evening, I'm Christina Villena. I'm the kindergarten teacher at Rainier Elementary School.
Good evening, I am Beth Menno, soon to be Mrs. Mangalinen. I should have put that, but I am from Oak Brook Elementary.
And we also have Lindsay Aconi-Guzzo on the call. She is the principal at Four Heroes Elementary, and Lisa Boyd, who is the principal at Oak Brook Elementary. And then Dana Rebloom is an admin intern, and she may be joining us at some point on this call. Go ahead and move forward, Ben.
Jenny, you're muted.
Just realized that, thank you. WAKIDS stands for Washington Kindergarten Inventory of Developing Skills. It's a transition process to ensure that students and their families can begin the educational process informed, and it also allows the teacher to gain insight into student abilities through conversations and observations. We start off the first couple of days of school with family connections, which are one-on-one conferences with you, your kindergartner, if at all possible, and your child's teacher. This is a time for you to ask questions about the classroom, expectations, anything that you are curious about, as well as share information about your child. It's also a chance for you to get to know your child's teacher, so all of you feel comfortable entering into the school year. Schools will be reaching out to you, if they haven't already, to set up a time to meet with your child's teacher. Next, Ms. Mena will discuss the importance of two-way communication. Next slide, please.
So absolutely, definitely, like it's titled Communication is Key. I know we all just registered, so we already have your email and phone number, but definitely keep it up to date. So if your number changes or your email changes, let us know. Maybe if you prefer phone over email, definitely let us know so that way we know how to get hold of you. Teachers will be contacting you probably most likely on a weekly basis. Maybe to talk about supplemental materials, when you can pick those up or how to get those out to you, any schedules, scheduling changes, family check-ins, and any other needs. Attendance will be taken daily. So if you feel like your child is ill or you have something come up, definitely reach out to your teacher before that day. That way you can know what's coming up, what you're missing. And also just overall communication, like let your teacher know, how is your child doing? How are you feeling? Is there any needs that you need to help support your child during this time, or help support your child during this time? So absolutely, it takes a village. We're all giving each other grace, and just communication is probably one of the most important things that we'll be relying on during this time. Next slide, talk about our standards and what your kindergarten teacher will be learning.
So this is just an overview of some of the main standards that we're going to be learning in kindergarten throughout the year. For reading, it's recognizing all their letter names and sounds, reading 50+ sight words, and then reading predictable short stories. Because once your kiddo knows their letter names and sounds, we'll move right on into blending words and continue on into that. For math, they're going to learn how to count to 100, write their numbers to 20, solve simple addition and subtraction problems, recognize solid shapes and flat shapes and all their attributes. Again, there's a lot more involved in the math and reading, but these are just some of the main highlights of standards that they'll learn throughout the school year. For writing, they're going to really learn proper letter formation and number formation. They're going to practice with the writing conventions, so starting with capital, having spaces, ending your sentence with a punctuation. They are going to work on narrative and informative and opinion writing. And so your teacher will be working with you throughout the school year on all these standards to ensure that these goals are met. And once your child does meet these goals, they will continue to help them to progress forward into first grade goals. Next slide.
So virtual learning will be a full day schedule for all students. School start and stop times are going to vary depending on each school. So you'll want to either check online or contact your child's school to find out specifics about when the school day will begin, as well as when it will end. Each child is going to spend 2.5 hours live online with their teacher. Group A will be live with the teacher in the morning, and Group B will be live with the teacher in the afternoon after a lunch break. The group that your child is going to be assigned to will be determined by last name. However, there may be some exceptions that might apply. When your child isn't with the teacher learning live, your child will continue to learn independently. What that really looks like or could look like would be pre-made teacher videos, possible assignments either online or pencil paperwork, as well as district learning apps. Next slide, please.
So here we have our classroom expectations. And I believe the key word would be consistency here. Like if they see consistency every day, they'll kind of get into that school mindset. So we're hoping for as much as possible, a quiet working space. We're asking for no toys, food, and hopefully no TV on in the background. That way we can hopefully have their full attention as much as we can. We will be, or depending on the building, we'll be giving out materials, or you'll have your school supplies ready for the lesson. Maybe crayons, pencils, your teacher might communicate that before the lesson. But I would say it'd be handy to have like a box or a bag with all your school materials. That way it's easy to access during the lessons. Also, this is something new for virtual learning. Make sure that your device is charged. We'll all be getting issued tablets. So definitely making sure those are charged up and ready to do the 2.5 hours for the live teaching. It is your kindergartner's class, but we ask that maybe an adult be kind of like nearby just in case they need help unmuting or muting, any kind of technology issues, or kind of just like managing and helping them focus. And because we have such a short time for each subject, we ask that you arrive on time. It'll be easier for transitioning, minimal distractions when people come and go. If you need to step out, you can just put in a little chat box or let your teacher know, maybe the bathroom. But we'll definitely be also putting in those breaks throughout that 2.5 hours for those who are concerned. And we can move to the next slide.
I'm gonna jump in really quick just because there's a few questions in the chat. This is just a general Clover Park School District information. So if you're like, I don't see anyone from my kid's school, you're in the right place. We're just answering for the whole district, and then your child's school will reach out to schedule those walk-ins conferences and touch base with you specifically. So you're not in the wrong place just because you didn't hear your student's school. These are just some some representatives for the kindergarten team for the whole district.
Okay, so this is our social emotional learning slide. So we will have a time designated in the day for social emotional learning. There'll be about 20 minutes, give or take, depending on the school. We're gonna work on social skills. We're gonna talk about feelings. You see down at the bottom of the slide, we have sad, joy, worried, and anger. And so we're gonna mix it up into fun ways to teach kids how to handle what's going on and to handle their emotions and feelings. But this is also going to be a time that's dedicated to having a lot of fun. I mean, kindergarten's fun, so we're going to ensure that the online platform still has fun games and fun activities. We'll still get to do costume day and other fun things. So there will be that emotional piece. It won't just be pencil, paper, sitting in front of a screen, getting talked to. There will be a lot of fun involved.
So students will utilize district learning apps that are going to be assigned by the teacher during the time that he or she is not live online with their teacher. You can see just a couple of examples here on the screen of what they might be utilizing, but more detailed information will come specifically from your teacher. To get to these apps, you would go to the Clover Park School District website. At the top, you'd see a tab that says Student. Click on that. And under that, there'll be a drop down that has District Learning App, which you'll click on. And then finally, you'll click on Clever. To get into Clever, you're gonna need a password. And again, that will be specific to your child. And so your teacher will be providing that as soon as they reach out and or during walk-ins. Next slide, please. Is Ms. Rebloom? She was going to take this slide if she is here in the.
She has not joined us yet.
Okay.
Do you want to do it, or you would like me to?
Go for it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So ELL and special education services. So if your child has already been identified for special education services, then they will receive the appropriate services that are identified on their IEPs. They should be contacted by their IEP case manager in the first few days of school to get all of those things clarified with you and get services up and running. For English language learners, if your child has already been identified, then they will receive ELL services online, and you will receive a scheduled time that they'll receive those services during virtual learning. If your child has not yet been identified, then there's a home language survey as part of the registration process, and that will be used right now to unofficially identify students for services until we are able to do in-person assessments with them. So the home language survey will be our qualification measure for now. Okay, so ladies, I am going to go through, we've been trying to answer some that are individual questions, but I'm going to go through some of the ones that seem kind of like a everybody type question, and whoever wants to answer is welcome to. So I know that this question is probably going to be teacher specific, but you guys can kind of give some examples of what it might look like in a kindergarten classroom in general. So the question is, how is my student supposed to complete his or her work in a virtual setting?
So I know for my classroom in particular, we'll, depending on which class you're in, you get to meet with me live. And then when you're no longer with me live, I'm recording lessons that I'm putting on YouTube, and that'll be linked in their Teams, and they'll get to watch reading lessons and math lessons. And then I'll have actual work that you can pull off the computer that's paper pencil, and you'll be able to work on the papers that I'm talking about in my lessons. So it's kind of how they get to do that afternoon time or morning time when they're not live with the teacher and be working back and forth. And then when I meet again the next day, we go over that stuff and I get to interact with what they did the day previously.
Also, those district learning apps that I mentioned earlier on the resource slide, they also will be assigned on a daily basis for students to work on math or reading skills, and teachers can see student progress, and see how long this child's been online, how many lessons they've gone through, and be able to track that way as well to see what areas the child is excelling in and or areas that they might need help in as well.
Okay. Another question was if they have an AM or a PM schedule, what time is it that they're going to be in class? So Christina, do you want to answer for the early start schools and then?
Sure. So if I'm reading the question or understanding the question correctly, if you are an AM class, then you're meeting with your teacher in the morning. If you're a PM class, then you're meeting with your teacher in the afternoon. So therefore, you would do your packets and watch the previously recorded videos in the morning and meet with your teacher in the afternoon. But if you're AM class, then you meet with your teacher in the morning and you do your online games and packets and what have you in the afternoon.
And I think specifically like for an early start school like Rainier, what are those time frames? 7:45?
So if you are, if you're in an AM class, you're with me from 7:45 to 10:15. And then if you're my PM class, it's like 11:45 to 2:15.
And then Beth, are you guys a late start school?
Yeah, so we'll be working off our regular normal starting hours, which is 8:30. So until, I'm thinking 11 is when, if you're an AM class, that's when you'll be having your live teaching. And then you'll have your lunch and break, and then have your specialist and your asynchronous or independent learning in the afternoon.
And if you have specific questions, you can contact Lisa. There you go. You got muted. If you have specific questions, you can always call your child's school. Your child's teacher will also be reaching out to you to give you exact times for your schedule, but just to clarify that there are 2 different start times for elementary schools. This is kind of a case-by-case question, but I will let them kind of answer how they might do that for kindergarten. So somebody said, how will supplemental work be graded? So how does grading work in a virtual setting for kindergarten?
It's a really good question. I do think it'll be up to your individual teacher. If I'm going off of myself, I'm actually not having any kindergartners attach an assignment that I'm then going to grade. I do a lot of my assessing while I'm working with the kids in our group setting. We do have actual assessments, and when it comes time to that, then I'll be doing one-on-one assessments with your child to ensure that their progress is going the way that we want it to go. And all of the teachers will, based off of their assessments and how we're watching the kids grow, will start to differentiate the instruction for your kids. So you'll start to see that as you continue on in the school year.
Scrolling down. So can you speak a little bit more about attendance? So there's lots of questions about how, like, reporting of attendance. Do you want them emailing you? Do they contact the school? What do they do when they are going to be absent? And just kind of, you can talk a little bit about like the communication and that kind of stuff with attendance.
So we're going to try to keep this, even though it's virtual learning, we want it to look and feel just as much like the classroom setting as possible. So if you had older kids in the past and you know how that looks, it's the same. We're treating this as much as possible, this virtual world that we're in, like a physical classroom. So we do expect and hope that children will be on time. If your child is sick, not feeling well, has an appointment, please just reach out to your child's teacher and or the front office. But that can help us a lot because we've got about 10 minutes after the students arrive to put in attendance during either that morning session or the afternoon session into Skyward, which is our program that tracks attendance. So just that two-way communication that Ms. Mano had talked about earlier is really vital. So if you know that there's something coming up, please try to let us know in advance. Also, if it's something that came up abruptly, you didn't know about it, you can always let us know after the fact. Hey, sorry, so-and-so was out yesterday. We ended up having a family emergency. And then that's that two-way communication where we can let you know what was missed, or say, okay, if you go into the files tab under class materials, you'll be able to find that PowerPoint that we worked on, or a Bitmoji classroom, or whatever it is that your teacher has assigned for the day.
And just can I add on to that?
Go for it.
Just to add on to that, I'm watching some of the comments come through, and that was that piece that I think Beth talked about the communication with your teacher and how important it is. I mean, if you're struggling, I see questions about, well, how can I do this if I'm working, and what about daycare, and what about other kids? That's really where that communication piece with your teacher comes into play, because ultimately we want your child to succeed. So if you just communicate with your teacher about what's happening in your house and what's going on, then we can work out different avenues to make sure that there's the best environment and the best way to reach your child and to be able to teach them.
Thank you. Another question is, do the teachers track to make sure students are using the apps that he or she is supposed to be using? I see lots of nodding heads.
Yes, we can go in, once we roster your kids into one of the apps, we can go in and see how much time is spent. We can see what problems they're missing. So for me personally, when I'm checking and I see these red flags of kids are not answering these questions correctly, I typically then reach out to the family and we talk about how we can actually solve those problems, and that becomes a lesson so I know where to start teaching them and where they're at.
And it's not to check up on students or families, whether they're online or not. It's to be able to track that progress, because that is part of that assessment piece, right? If they get, some of these are adaptive, which means that if students are getting many questions correct in a row, that difficulty level bumps up a little bit. And so it meets your child where he or she is. If they're struggling, and they get some questions wrong, we can also see that. And so we know, okay, they knew flat shapes, no problem with that at all, but 3D shapes or solid shapes are something that they're struggling with. So I know as a teacher, that's where I need to put some emphasis for that child or a group of children. So it really is a great learning tool. And because we do have 2.5 hours of that independent learning time, it should also, we hope, take some pressure off of you. As far as we don't, you don't have to come up with something to try and fill that time. It is intentional and planned on our part, in hopes of supporting you.
So one of the questions in the chat was, when will students get their devices, and will they show us how to get online to start classes? So the date of getting devices varies by school. You should have been contacted by your school, but if you have not been, you can always call your individual school and ask that question. And they will help you at the checkout process with getting things up and running. But that's also an opportunity for those WAKids conferences with your kindergarten teacher to make sure you have everything up and going and ready for the first day of class. Somebody asked, where would they find their assignments? Where are the assignments going to be?
That would definitely vary by teacher, depending on what apps they decide to use or what programs they decide to use. And it's definitely not a, hey, you did this, hey, you didn't do this type of deal, pass, fail. They're honestly just learning tools to help your child grow, to help us monitor their progress. So it's not a catch you, hey, you didn't do this assignment. It's honestly in the best interest of all the children and their learning and their growth. So if you have any difficulties accessing those apps or you're not sure how to navigate it, again, that goes back to the communication, like reach out to your teacher, reach out to your child's teacher and let them know, like, hey, we're having trouble. We're not quite getting this, or see the use of this. That way we know that your child is getting what they need. And it's all about grace. We're giving families grace. We're hoping for some grace because it's all a kind of a new, with that whole new word, that unprecedented. So we're all learning together, but everyone is in it for the child. So we honestly just want to make sure that your child is getting the most. And like Genevieve said, it's very intentional. So I think that answers that question.
And as she said, I mean, it is, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, sorry.
Do they need a printer at home to be able to access the learning?
No, they don't. I know for me, I am putting their stuff online, but if parents don't have a printer, I'm also making a packet per the week that they can pick up at the school. And if all else fails, you can pull up the actual papers and just do it pencil paper on a notebook that you have at home.
You guys can kind of generally answer this, but if you need me to jump in, what about students with 504s and IEPs?
As far as Oak Brook, I know already Lisa Moore, our amazing resource teacher, she's already getting those kiddos scheduled in, and we'll be reaching out the first couple of days, if not before the school year, to reach out to those families and see how we can support their goals and the times that she'll be meeting them, or if she'll be supporting them during their virtual class time with the teachers. So it's definitely on a case by case, hence the individualized education plan. So the case manager should be reaching out in the next week or so.
And I just wanted to jump in and answer that question as well. My name is Mrs. Akoni Guzzo, and I'm the principal of Four Heroes Elementary. And I just want to reassure families of students with IEPs and special education that IEPs will absolutely be in effect this school year. We know that there is a lot of apprehension around how services will be provided. So just like what Ms. Benno was saying, you will hear from your child's special education teacher as soon as possible once they are able to confirm their schedule, so that they can talk through how they're going to specifically be providing services. But we are seeing that question a lot, and just want to reassure you that that is absolutely going to be provided and a priority of ours.
So I think I answered this in, I actually don't know where it goes if I say answer in chat to everybody, but I'll answer it right here. So there's lots of questions about when you'll find out who your child's teacher is. And I do know that's school by school, how that information is being released this year. So if you have specific questions like that, you can always call the secretary at your school and they can let you know what the plan is to release that information for your building. And maybe one of the other principals wants to answer this one, so I stopped talking. How will lunches work? Meals and lunches.
That's a great question. We are going to be having, this is Lisa Boyd, proud principal of Oak Brook Elementary. And we are going to be sharing lunches at the school buildings. It'll work very similarly to when kids are in school. They will buy lunch based on where they are. If you're going to be getting the free and reduced forms if you have not received it, you will get those very soon to fill out. And wherever they land on, there will be prices posted, and those meals will be provided in the play shed area of our school buildings. And so you'll get more information about the logistics of that from each building. Each building principal will reach out to you to let you know exactly the times for picking up or coming to school if you're going to get a meal at school.
And I do want to add to that, that there will still be a select few locations for mobile lunches as well. It won't necessarily look like what the spring meal system looked like, where the transportation routes are being followed to provide meals, but there will still be a few locations that will be provided in that way. And all of that information is readily available right now on the Clover Park School District website. If you go to the main page, click Return to Learning, there's a meals option that you can look and see specifically which sites will be available for mobile food as well.
This is a great kindergarten teacher question. How do you anticipate holding their attention on the screens for their synchronous learning sessions?
We both admitted. Of course, it all depends on teachers, but I have been just planning on a lot of hands-on stuff, like working with manipulatives, little videos, and like I said, definitely incorporating those breaks. They're not going to be exactly scheduled breaks, but as a teacher, you can just tell when they're just ready to burst at the seams. So I'll be incorporating like 5-minute breaks here and there so they can go run a lap, use the bathroom, just get the wiggles out, little movement breaks, just things like that. We understand that they are 5 years old and they're starting kindergarten. And so being in front of the screen for 2.5 straight hours is not reasonable, but we're definitely gonna be working on their stamina throughout the year, just like if they were to be in the classroom. Just like in the classroom, they're not able to sit down on the carpet for 5 minutes for the most part. So we are taking that to account. We're trying to find as many resources as we can, and bouncing ideas off of each other and our partner teachers about how to get them moving, how to keep them engaged. So we are very cognizant of that. I'll let Christina speak.
No, you were right on. We will do lots of brain breaks. We do a lot of games online too. And then a lot of, get up and do 10 jumping jacks and Simon Says. But one of the things that the kids loved last year was scavenger hunts. Go find something that is red, and they would like race off the screen and come back with something that is red. And we can also align it to things that are educational, like what's something in your house that starts with the letter M, and then they're working on their first sound, or find me 3 things, so they have to count it out. So there'll be a lot of movement as well throughout it.
2 questions kind of along the same lines. So are they expected to be sitting in front of the computer, getting instruction for the normal amount of hours that they would normally be in school? And if the answer is no, how long are they expected to?
So as far as your class time, if you are AM class, then you would be sitting in front of the computer with me from 7:45 to 10:15. That seems like a long stretch, but then when you add in all the brain breaks we're going to do and the jumping around and go get your whiteboard and now you're going to write, and so it's not just like you right now are just sitting there listening to us talk. It won't be like that for them. We have PowerPoints that are going to pop up and fun animation and lots of things. And again, it'll be a work in progress. It's same as if they were to come into the classroom. They're expected to sit down and listen to us teach in the classroom, just like they would on the computer. But it's a progress. So, you start off with short increments of teaching, a little bit more breaks. And then as time goes on, longer periods of teaching, shorter periods of breaks as they develop that stamina of sitting there and listening and being able to participate. So it's a work in progress, but they are expected to be there for the class time. And participate with everybody. And again, if this turns out to be a huge problem, that's that communication piece that you would have with your teacher to figure out how to help with any issues that might arise.
That
Okay.
2.5 hours is also broken into math and science. So we're hopefully hitting the different subjects that are of interest to your child. Maybe 30 minutes of reading, not so exciting, but loves math. Your child might love math. So we're that 2.5 hours is broken up into several different subjects with a little break in between. So we're hitting a lot of different aspects. And then there's that afternoon time period. So after about an hour and a half of a recess lunch break, if you were live in the morning, yes, some of it will be back online with some district apps, but your child's teacher will probably also have something like grab a whiteboard or a notebook and write your ABCs or practice writing your name. So it's not all screen time. Again, we understand 5-year-olds, and this is new for everybody, and so we're going to work together to make it the best possible experience.
Okay, there are lots of questions, which is Wonderful. One that I keep seeing, I'm going to have this be the last one we answer live. And then I just want to reassure parents, we are checking all of these messages and are going to work to get a frequently asked questions page with answers to all of these questions on the district website. I also want to encourage you that if you have specific questions about your child or your child's schedule or school-specific questions, school secretaries are in the building. So please feel free to call and reach out and ask questions that are school-specific. So one question that has come up a couple times is dress code. Is there a specific dress code that students should be following?
There's not necessarily a dress code. Sorry, Jenny, you can answer this too, but we are asking the children are dressed for school. It'll make it more fun when we get to do our pajama day and we get to do costume day, if that's more of something that they get to earn and something fun. And it also just helps them be in the present mindset to be ready when you've gotten your clothes on. I know for my own daughter, when we moved on to online in the spring, it was a process, but it was no, get up and get your clothes on. So she knew it was time to do school and it wasn't time to just lounge around the house.
Yeah, and in that same vein, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. We're trying to make this as much like a physical setting in this virtual world that we're entering as possible. And also thinking about the possibility of going to a hybrid or coming back to school at some point during the year. We really want to get into those routines now, right? Especially in your house, and having those routines set and established. So we get up at this time and we eat at this time and then you're online and this is what you're doing for the day. And getting dressed is part of that. Not necessary to have a dress code per se, but yeah, maybe not in your pajamas, because once, hopefully, maybe, we get back to a physical setting, that's already established in your household and it eliminates that struggle later on. So just trying to keep in mind that as much as possible, keeping it like a physical classroom and just like they are going to school would be helpful.
All right, so we are going to end there, but again, we're not ignoring your questions. If you put them in, we are going to make sure that they get answered, and we will have a frequently asked questions. We also recorded this session, so if you know anyone who might need to check back in or missed it, it will be available on our district website in the next few days. Anything else anyone wants to add before we close out? All right.
Thanks for coming. I think it'll be a great year.
And thank you, kindergarten teachers and everybody else for presenting.
Thank you for coming tonight too. We appreciate 400 and plus joining us tonight.
Thank you all. We appreciate the partnership and look forward to a great year together.